Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. Reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. We are reading from Canto 3, Chapter 30, Description of Adverse Fruitive Activities. So, currently we are at text 7. So, just a minute. Just a minute. Yeah, text 30. Sandhyamana sarvanga isham udvahanaadhina karotyavirtam mudho duritani durashayah. Translation.
Although he is always burning with anxiety, such a fool always performs all kinds of mischievous activities, with a hope which is never to be fulfilled, in order to maintain his so-called family and society. Purport. It is said that it is easier to maintain a great empire than to maintain a small family, especially in these days when the influence of Kali Yuga is so strong that everyone is harassed and full of anxieties because of accepting the false presentation of Maya's family. The family we maintain is created by Maya. It is the perverted reflection of the family in Krishna Loka. In Krishna Loka, there are also family, friends, society, father, and mother. Everything is there, but they are eternal. Here, as we change bodies, our family relationships also change. Sometimes we are in a family of a human beings, sometimes in a family of demigods, sometimes a family of cats, or sometimes a family of dogs. Family, society, and friendship are flickering, and so they are called asat. It is said that as long as we are attached to this asat, temporary, non existing society and family, we are always full of anxieties. The materialists do not know that the family, society, and friendship here in this material world are only shadows, and thus they become attached. Naturally, their hearts are always burning, but in spite of all inconveniences, they still work to maintain such false families because they have no information of the real family association with Krishna. Hare Krishna.
So, now here Although he's always burning with anxiety, such a fool always performs all kinds of mischievous activity in the so-called hope to maintain one's family and society. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that the influence of Kali Yuga is so strong that it is very difficult even to maintain the small families, especially in the age of Kali. Everyone is harassed and full of anxieties. And this is very true. One can see that, previously people had much huge families. And of course, there was a poverty, but it was, the anxiety was always on the level of maybe roti kapda makan. But nowadays, people have roti kapda makan, but the anxieties are, the much beyond roti kapda makan, right? So this is because of influence of Kali. So when somebody is trying to find family happiness here, what Prabhupada mentions here is that in Krishna Loka also. Why? Because the family happiness is there even in the spiritual world, right? So family happiness is there in the spiritual world also. And the material world, one has the equal chance to make one's family into a spiritual family. That is very important. And that's why you will see devotees writing this ICO. ICO means in care of, or a devotee feels trustee of his own family. So what this means is that devotee has a greater chance to make his family members into wonderful devotees. He can try his best. And how you would deal with the devotees? By serving them. Similarly, one will deal with family members in the mood of genuine service to the family. And this is very important. Otherwise, what happens is that one will be simply attracted to the, later in 12th canto, we'll hear this, one will be simply attracted to the fleeting family affection without a genuine spiritual contribution in the family, and one will miss to make the family into a real family. So this is now, this is what the where the anxiety of Kali Yuga comes in picture. Text 8. आक्षिप्तात्मो इंद्रिय स्त्रीणाम असतीनाम च मायया रहो रचयितालापै शिशूनाम कलभाषिणाम. Translation.
Translation: He gives heart and senses to a woman who falsely charms him with Maya. He enjoys solitary embraces and talking with her, and he is enchanted by the sweet words of the small children. Purport: Family life within the kingdom of illusory energy Maya is just like a prison for the eternal living entity. In prison, a prisoner is shackled by iron chains and iron bars. Similarly, a conditioned soul is shackled by the charming beauty of a woman, by her solitary embraces, and talks of so-called love, and by the sweet words of his small children. Thus, he forgets his real identity. In this verse, the words Strinam Asatinam indicate that womanly love is just to agitate the mind of a man. Actually, in the material world, there is no love. Both the women and the man are interested in their sense gratification. For sense gratification, a woman creates an illusory love, and the man becomes enchanted by such false love and forgets his real duty. When there are children as a result of such a combination, the next attraction is to the sweet words of the children. The love of the woman at home and talk of the children make one a secure prisoner, and thus he cannot leave his home. Such a person is termed in Vedic language a Grahamedi, which means one whose center of attraction is home. Grahastha refers to the one who lives with family, wife, and children, but whose real purpose of living is to develop Krishna consciousness. One is therefore advised to become a Grahast and not a Grahamedi. The Grahastha concern is to get out of the family life created by illusion and enter into real family life with Krishna, whereas the Grahamedi's business is to repeatedly chain himself to the so-called family life in one life after another and perpetually remain in the darkness of Maya. Hare Krishna.
Now there is the further entanglement of Grihamedhi. So when we see these kind of verses, one should be very clear. It is talked about Grihamedhi ashram. It is not ashram as such. It is not talked about Grihastha ashram, right? And therefore, some odd inspiration should not be derived, thinking that I should be detached from my family. Nothing will happen. By you being detached from your family, you will create another family. Simple it is. So, and that's why Srila Prabhupada writes very elaborately about Grihamedhi versus Grihastha. So, such a Grihamedhi life, the life is simply shackled by the illusion of Maya. And illusion of Maya means, and later it is going to become so strong. Nowadays, that is called as Grihamedhi life. What is a Grihamedhi life? Grihamedhi life means husband and wife, they are living just like a hostel life, right? Hostel life. People have no faith in each other. They have, and such deep attachment for one's money. People literally have this kind of a 50-50% sharing. Can you imagine this? They live in the same house. They are enjoying bodies of each other. They are on the bed together. And when it comes to money, it is the people become so degraded that they are living, no, these are my 50% expense and these are your 50% expense. As if the life has become, uh, you know, uh, sorry for the strong words, but I'm using Prabhupada words. Of course, when Prabhupada uses by his authority and age, they becomes very appropriate. When I use, they will not be appropriate, but these are Prabhupada's words. Institutionalized prostitution, right? So this is not a grihastha life. If you have no faith in your husband, if you have no faith in your wife, and your all the dealings are simply based on how much you are earning, how much I am earning, and this is my 50% and this is your 50%, then sorry, sir. Prabhupada very clearly calls this is a Grihamedhi life. And what is the proof? The proof will be such a life will be filled with extreme level of anxiety. Right. So now we are talking about such Grihamedhi life. Okay. Now with this context, let us read the translation. He gives heart and senses to the woman who falsely charms him with Maya, and enchanted by the sweet words of Shishunam Kalabhashana. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains, family life, Grihamedhi life in the kingdom of Maya is a great illusion for the living entity. He is shackled by the chains, just like in a prison. Prisoner is shackled by the iron rods. Here in this case, he is shackled by the sweet embraces to one another and the sweet talks of the children. And because such a Grihamedhi life where the only criteria is, later it will graphically Bhagavatam will explain, Dampatye Abhiruchir Hetuhu. Only criteria is how expert the person is in sense gratification. That's it. That is not Indian civilization. That is not Vedic. That is not Sanatan. Right? There are thousands of cases of people, especially in the Western countries, when one of the partner becomes less attractive simply by the age, or becomes less competent in providing sense gratification, right, on the bed, and then people simply file for divorce. They say, yeah, this is not good. And people are on one side, they will be taking some scores of medicines like Viagra and this and that, and another side, and the family life just simply goes to a ditch. And we are in the same Kali Yuga. We are we are eating the money of the same Western civilization, most of the India, right? So one should be aware of these biases coming in one's life, these kind of mindset, these kind of habits, or these kind of characteristics, traits that are coming in one's life. And that's why Srila Prabhupada very strongly talks about this. Manly or womanly love, because here Maitreya is talking to Vidura, and therefore it is talking about womanly love. And in that cons, for a man, woman, and for a woman, man, in the Grihamedhi ashram, is just to agitate the mind of each other, and so that there is enjoyment of sense gratification. And thus, the member, they become falsely attached, and there is simply, and at least previously, when there was no illusion of money or banking system, and the kind of, at least even on that platform, there was some sanity. Now the things have become so transactional, right? Even in uh, even in so-called married life, people live like hostel life. People just living like live-in partners, although they have taken Sat Fere and Saptabadi and everything, and it's all a mindset problem. People are extremely attached to their ideas. People are extremely attached to the concept of money that have foolishly, stupidly not realizing, because they are attached to that kind of money, they will never grow in their life to a bigger money, right? because you get what first you have to give to receive. We have to give without the idea of receiving back. Then only that is called as giving. Otherwise, it's a transaction. But we have seen in married life such horrible fights, and a devotee as a community is that not that we are transcendental to what is happening in the society. No, we are also part of society, and this, if we are not careful, will happen in the devotee community as well, right? And one has to be very careful about this, that am I really a grihastha or I'm a grihamedhi? Sometimes people feel, no, Prabhuji, my wife may cheat me. Sometimes that lady feels, no, Prabhuji, my husband may cheat me. Following Varnashram, it is better to be cheated. Of course, take this with a pinch of salt, than trying to be so crooked and exploitative that we go against Varnashram and against our dharma. So Prabhupada says such a life is Grihamedhi life. Grihastha life is different. Grihastha life means he also lives with family. He also will be having the solitary embraces and the sweet talks, Shishunam, Kalabhashinam. But all that is, because Krishna is in the center, is spiritualized. How? Lord Krishna says this. What is that? Kamosmi Bharatarshava. Dharmo aviruddha bhuteshu. Kamosmi. I am that lust. Or, Prabhupada writes, I am that life of sense gratification. When it is dharmo aviruddha bhuteshu. Right? So this is the difference between Grihamedhi life and Grihastha life. So two things. One thing is that when we read purports or paragraphs like this, one should not take wrong inspiration and become detached from family life. No, Prabhuji, I want to advance in spiritual life. Look at this, what Bhagavatam says. And, one becomes falsely detached. That is called as Markata Vairagya, the renunciation of a monkey. Neither simply because we are trying to become a devotee, we are immune to the influence of Kali Yuga. That also one has to be very careful. That simply because I'm trying to become a devotee doesn't mean that I become transcendental. This is another extreme, and I become immune to Kali Yuga, and and that's how I living a hostel life, I living a 50% kind of a the expenses with my wife, and this becomes all right. No, it doesn't. So both the things one has to be very careful. Prabhupada says, therefore, one should always be aware, just like a jiva has spiritual family in Krishna Loka. We have a spiritual family in Krishna Loka. And when we are going to become devotee, that spiritual family is reflected even in this world. And therefore, devotee will always serve the family very faithfully. Yesterday, we have seen the examples of devotees serving non-devotee family members. In Pune, we had, unfortunately, we have to use this word in the past tense, Satyavati Mataji, phenomenal personality. She became a devotee. Her, husband, and in the early days, family members, and they were not becoming devotees. And they come from Goan family, Goa side. And Satyavati Mataji, she was following all four regulative principles. And, and then because they came from Goa, it was very normal to eat fish and everything else. And she used to cook like this in the kitchen. And whatever is offerable, she used to offer it to Krishna. Look at this. Look at the sense of deep family commitment, right? By her commitment and dedication, she attracted so much of blessings that very soon her husband also became a devotee. And he is one of the greatest devotee in Pune, celebrated his grace, Jaidev Prabhu. Her children became devotees. And through her, practically half the Pune congregation is developed by preaching programs through her, or those who are attending her programs and later attending further preaching. So this is the potency of somebody doing one's varnashram very nicely. So two things, two extremes, when we go through the purports like this, two extremes are to be avoided. One extreme is, taking it on the face value and, trying to take some wrong inspiration. And second is, thinking oneself as a devotee and thinking oneself that I am beyond Kali Yuga and the influence of Kali Yuga. Text 9. So, powerful verse. We'll just recite it once. Gruheshu kuta dharmeshu
सर्वेषु कूटधर्मेषु
धर्मेषु
तन्त्रेषु अतीन्द्रितः
मुक्ततन्त्रेषु अतन्त्र्यः
कुर्वन् दुःखप्रतिकारम् कुर्वन् दुःखप्रतीकारम्
कारणं
दुःखप्रतीकारं
सुखवत् मन्यते गृही.
सुखवन्मन्यते गृही.
Translation.
The attached householder remains in his family life, which is full of diplomacy and politics, always spreading miseries and controlled by acts of sense gratification. He acts just to counteract the reactions of all his miseries, and if he can successfully counteract such miseries, he thinks that he is happy. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita, the personality of Godhead himself certifies the material world as an impermanent place that is full of miseries. There is no question of happiness in this material world, either individually or in terms of family, society, or country. If something is going on in the name of happiness, that is also illusion. Here in this material world, happiness means successful counteraction to the effects of distress. The material world is so made that unless one becomes a clever diplomat, his life will be a failure. Not to speak of human society, even the society of lower animals, the birds and bees, clearly manages its bodily demands of eating, sleeping, and mating. Human society competes nationally or individually, or in the attempt to be successful, the entire human society becomes full of diplomacy. We should always remember that in spite of all diplomacy and all intelligence in the struggle for our existence, everything will end in a second by the supreme will. Therefore, all our attempts to become happy in this material world are simply a delusion offered by Maya.
Such attached Grihamedi householder. Okay, so we have already Srila Prabhupada has described all this is applicable to Grihamedi and not the Grihasthas, but still the Grihasthas also can take some words of caution from here. Such attached Grihamedi householder remains in his family life, which is full of diplomacy and politics. And so, look at the title of this chapter. This title is Description of Adverse Fruitive Activities. So, there is a lot of negative news in the chapter, and so let's not get demotivated by the negative news. It is talked about Grihamedis, and we are Grihasthas, right? Or we are trying to be Grihastha. So, but we take good lessons from this. The attached Grihamedi householder remains in the family life, which is full of diplomacy and politics, always spreading miseries and controlled by the acts of sense gratification. And he thinks himself happy, simply he counteracts such miseries. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says that material world is characterized like this for a Grihamedi. What is that characteristics? Dukkhalayam ashashvatam. For a devotee, it is not dukkhalayam ashashvatam. For a devotee, the same material world becomes Vishwam Purna Sukhayate. Vishwam Purna Sukhayate means with the right mindset, actually, Susukham Kartum Abhyayam. One can very happily live even in the material world. But as far as the Grihamedi consciousness goes, this is Dukkhalayam Ashashvatam. It is impermanent place full of misery. Somebody will say, no, sir, I will adjust with misery. There is impermanence, Dukkhalayam, and is Ashashvatam also. Even if somebody adjusts with Dukkha, by the time when he's adjusting, one's position only is changed, and one will get another body based on karma and everything. So, as such, there is not a great happiness in this material world. And all the happiness is generally mitigating one kind of misery through another, or paying one bill after another. And this is how, and the material world, one has to be also very clever diplomat, because it is full of diplomacy and politics. Simple things. Later, 12th canto, Bhagavatam will talk about such simple things. There will be quarrels and diplomacy, right? Nowadays, even between brothers and sisters, brother, the division of the property, this and that has become such a cause of such a dissension that very, very well-to-do, well-to-mean, cultured families, they are also in complete chaos when it comes to the point of, the distributing the property. So this is the one of the symptom of Kali Yuga, very specifically. So therefore, Prabhupada says, material world is so made that unless one becomes a clever diplomat, his life will be a failure. But in spite of all his diplomacy and all the intelligence, he still struggles for existence, not realizing that everything can be wiped out by the supreme will, that is Kala, within a moment. And therefore, all our attempts to become happy are simply delusion offered by Maya. Again, this is for Grihamidhi life. And devotees have lot of message to carry from this as well. Text 10. अर्थैरापादितैर्गुर्व्यार् हिंसया इतः ततश्च तान् पुष्णाति येषां पोषेण शेषभुक्याति अधस्वयम्. Translation.
Translation: he secures money by committing violence here and there, and although he employs it in the service of his family, he himself eats only a little portion of the food thus purchased, and he goes to hell for those for whom he earned the money in such an irregular way. Purport: there is a Bengali proverb, "The person for whom I have stolen accuses me of being a thief." The family members for whom an attached person acts in so many criminal ways are never satisfied. In illusion, an attached person serves such family members, and by serving them, he is destined to enter into a hellish condition of life. For example, a thief steals something to maintain his family and is caught and imprisoned. This is the sum and substance of material existence and attachment to material society, friendship, and love. Although an attached family man is always engaged in getting money by hook or by crook for the maintenance of his family, he cannot enjoy more than what he could consume even without such criminal activities. A man who eats 8 ounces of foodstuffs may have to maintain a big family and earn money by any means to support that family, but he himself is not offered more than what he can eat, and sometimes he eats the remnants that are left after his family members are fed. Even by earning money by unfair means, he cannot enjoy life for himself. That is called the covering illusion of Maya. The process of illusory service to society, country, and community is exactly the same everywhere. The same principle is applicable even to big national leaders. A national leader who is very great in serving his country is sometimes killed by his countrymen because of irregular service. In other words, one cannot satisfy his dependents by this illusory service, although one cannot get out of the service because servant is his constitutional position. A living entity is constitutionally part and parcel of the Supreme Being, but he forgets that he has to render service to the Supreme Being and diverts his attention to serving others. This is called Maya. By serving others, he falsely thinks that he is master. The head of a family the head of the family thinks of himself as the master of the family, or the leader of a nation thinks of himself as by serving Maya is gradually going to hell. Therefore, a sane man should come to the point of Krishna consciousness and engage in the service of the Supreme Lord, applying his whole life, all of his wealth, his entire intelligence, and his full power of speaking. Hare Krishna.
Now, such a Grihamidhi secures money by committing violence or by corruption here and there. Right? So, corruption is also another form of violence. Although he employs it in the service of the family, he himself eats a very little portion, and thus he goes to hell for whom he has earned the money in such irregular way. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada quotes Bengali proverb saying that a person who, any Bengali here? They can actually say what this proverb is. That for whom I have stolen, they are accusing me of being a thief. Right? In Maharashtra, there is a story of Valya Kodi. In Karnataka, same story becomes Valya Gauda, they call it. I was hearing from Radhesham Prabhu's lecture. Valya Gauda, they say. So this Valya Kodi, he was a hunter, and he used to do such extreme violence and secure, and then Narad Muni asked him one day, that go and check with your family members. Are they going to accept the sins coming? And he said, of course, they are my family members. And Narad Muni said, yeah, I am also confident like you, but just check once. And he was he got a rude shock when his family members of Valakoli, who were very frank people and nice, they, thank God they said that to Valakoli. And they said that no, to feed us is your responsibility, but if you are doing it in a sinful way, we are not ready to suffer for your sins. And then he got a realization, and one story is that he later went on to become great sage, Valmiki. So the point is that although one may commit extreme form of corruption or violence, nowadays people commit to violence also, and so that he can acquire more and more money so that it can be used in the service of the family, personally he's going to wear only those, at a time one set of clothes only he's going to wear, at a time 1 6x4 bed only that he's going to sleep, at a time one room only one room only is where he's going to stay. So by getting money hook or crook for the maintenance of the family, he cannot enjoy more than otherwise he would have enjoyed. And what happens? What happens is that although he may try to give such illusory happiness to the illusory family, we are again talking about Griha Medhis, he is creating long-lasting impact which will go on for lifetimes. Now look at this, what a business proposal it is, right? That you get some satisfaction for 20-30 years, and for that you have to suffer for next 3,000 5,000 years, one life after another lifetimes. And Prabhupada says this is the power of Maya. By earning money by unfair means and not even trying to enjoy himself and trying to provide enjoyment for the illusory family, which has no regard for his future sufferings. Prabhupada says this is because, and this is not just seen with head of the family, this can be seen with head of the nation. Prabhupada here specifically talks about, in the mind is, you will understand whom is in the mind. Mahatma Gandhi, okay, and then John F. Kennedy. Prabhupada says, a national leader who is very great in serving his countrymen, sometimes killed by his own countrymen because of irregular service. Gandhiji's tantrum of giving back 55 crores that time, and to another country, and the whole thing backfired on him and he was killed. And similarly, there is a killing of John F. Kennedy, very, very reverential, very dearly loved US president. Because although one cannot get off the service, Prabhupada says this is what is the result of the services. Service means irregularity, and irregularity means there will be punishment. And therefore, one should not resort to such means which will give irregularity to one's life. Right. But then why everybody wants to serve? Prabhupada says because service is the constitutional position. Jivera swarupa Krishnera nityadas. When we remove Krishnera, das still remains. So if it is not Krishna, we will find the object of service and we will keep on serving. And this is called as Maya. And Prabhupada says this is how the head of the family, head of the nation, Rashtrapita, and everybody, they will be thinking, and thus they will be punished by their own family members for such irregular service. And therefore, a sane man should engage in the service of Lord Krishna by applying one's bodily resources, one's ability to speak, in the service of Supreme Lord. So we will conclude here and continue tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. If the purports are strong and my explanation is strong, will be strong. So forgive me because the chapter is like this, description of adverse fruitive activities. And I'm just repeating Srila Prabhupada, although trying to be,
Yes.
as appropriate as to my age and my authority. But
Yes.
these are
Thank
the
you.
purports, and this is how Srila Prabhupada explains. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare
Prabhupada.
Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank you.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.